What's good, everybody? Today we're talking about polynomial expressions, and in this video, I'm going to show you 4 different methods for solving polynomials. So method number 1, we're talking about factoring using the zero product property. The biggest thing here is to make sure that the equation is equal to 0. Now, when we're factoring, right, and we have more than 3 terms, we're going to factor by grouping, meaning we're going to factor the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. But a very important thing that you guys cannot forget, please make sure there's a subtraction sign, that you don't include a subtraction sign. Now what we're going to do, we're going to pull out a greatest common factor, right? And now look here, we could take off 3x to the second power. Once I do, I'll have x plus 5 left over. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the second group that I have. Let's make sure we have our negative sign. And I'm going to factor out a 2. So when I factor out a 2, we're going to have x plus 5 as well. And this is all equal to 0. Now, to make sure that you actually are factoring correct, what's in parentheses should match each other. So we know we're correct with that. So we have x plus 5. And then what is outside parentheses, we're going to group them together. Meaning the second parentheses will be 3x squared minus 2. And this is all equal to 0. Now at this stage, guys, we're going to solve. Meaning we're going to set both of these factors to 0. And once we do, we're going to get x is equal to -5 for our first one. But our second factor is a little bit different because it has an exponent. So we're going to do the same exact process. The only difference is we're going to take the square root of it. So once we're right here, 3x squared is equal to 2. We're now going to divide by 3 because it's like solving a regular equation. And at this step here, this is where I see students get confused the most. Just remember, if you have an exponent and you're trying to get rid of the exponent, you're going to take the square root of it, right? Because that's the opposite of an exponent, the square root. And the opposite of a square root is the exponent. So now what this does is this eliminates the exponent, and all we're left with is x. And then on the other side, we're going to have plus or minus the square root of 2 over 3. And the reason why is negative square root of this, negative times negative, could give us a positive answer. Okay? So when we're talking about solving with the zero product property in polynomials, this is exactly what they mean, and this would be our answer. Moving on to our second problem now, guys. But before I move on, if you've been enjoying this so far, we're going to ask that you smash the like button for us. Really helps our show and getting more people to see it. So our second problem now, we're still factoring, but now they want us to factor a trinomial by pulling out the GCF. So what that means is we're trying to divide all 3 of these number terms by the same number so that the equation will start off with x squared. So in this one, I could pull out 2. And when I pull out a 2, every number is basically getting divided by 2. So now, after we pull out that greatest common factor, we're now going to focus our attention to what's inside the parentheses only. Okay? So the 2 will still be out there, but we're trying to now determine what 2 binomials will give us this answer. And once I look at this, I know x minus 10 and x minus 1 would be my answer. When we multiply -10 and -1, we'll get a positive 10. And when we add it, we know that it's going to give us a -11 in the middle. So if they asked us to factor this problem, this would be our answer here. Just make sure you always check for a greatest common factor when this leading term is greater than 1. So the show is continuing on. And now in our third problem for today, guys, we're going to be focusing on the difference of squares. So rule number one, and a lot of students get this wrong because they're moving too fast. when we're talking about a difference of squares, it has to be a subtraction sign. If it's an addition sign, then it does not apply to it. That rule does not apply. So we have to have a subtraction sign. Number two, just remember that exponents, the square root of an exponent is just dividing it by 2. So if I'm asking you for the square root of k to the fourth, its square root is k squared. All right. So now we're working with the difference of squares, and the first thing we probably want to try to do is see if there's any greatest common factor that we could pull out. Because now that's how they're trying to trick us. They're trying to fool us. So instead of, k squared minus 9, right? K plus 3 times k minus 3, they try to make it more complicated. So we're going to pull out 3k to the second power, right? Once we do that, we have k squared minus 16 on the middle. So like I said in the last problem, we're not paying attention to 3k squared anymore, right? It's going to stay on the outside of the parentheses. It's not going anywhere. But now we focus on the inside. And what I tell my students, if we're working with the difference of squares, all you need to do, right, is look at k. Square root of k squared, k times k. Square root of 16, 4 times 4. And then the answer, I mean, not the answer, the signs have to, I'm talking about have to be different. And this would be our answer. So working with difference of squares, guys, just be good with your square roots, practice them, remember them. 2, variables, the square root of variables and exponents. Just divide your exponent by the root of 2. And then the last thing you want to do, guys, just check for your greatest common factor. So guys, we're going on to the last problem of the day. And if you made it so far in the video, thank you guys so much for sticking around. I ask that you just smash the like button for us. Really excited to be here and help you guys with this math. So now they gave us a polynomial and they want us to divide by using synthetic division. So how are we going to do that? So let me break synthetic division down to you guys. So the first thing we want to do, right, let's set the problem up. So you're going to take you're taking your whole polynomial and you're going to drop the variables. So x to the third turns into 1, 14x squared turns into just negative 14, 51x is just 51. Then we have negative 54 at the end. All right, we're going to draw a line here. And then right here, we're dividing by negative 2. For you guys that don't know why negative 2, just remember when we set our factor equal to 0, right, and solve, x would equal to negative 2. So this is why we are dividing by negative 2. All right, so we rewrote the problem. We got it set up. How do we start this bad boy off? So the way that we start this off, we're going to bring our first term down. All right, and then from here, we're going to repeat a lot of steps. So this is what we do. We're going to take our factor and multiply it. Negative 2 times 1. This is negative 2. Then I'm going to add these two answers together. Negative 16. Then I'm going to repeat. Negative 2 times negative 16, that's positive 32. Now I'm going to combine 32 and 51. So we're going to get 83. And then when I multiply negative 2 times 83, we're going to get negative 166. And once I combine these two together, my remainder, because this is what this serves as, is going to be negative 220. So, Mr. Peters, is this the final answer? No, 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 no. This is not the final answer. To express the final answer, guys, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take these numbers, these factors, and we're going to basically start off with the next exponent. So we started at x to the third, right? So for our problem now, our answer, I should say, we're going to have x squared minus 16x plus 83, all right? And this number here serves as our remainder. So you could put r minus and negative 220. Now, before we wrap this video up, just two things I want to remind you guys of. Number one, if this was 0, there won't be no remainder. The answer would just be x squared minus 16x plus 83. So please just remember this last slot is your remainder. It's 0, no remainder. Two, after you divide, your answer is always going to be one exponent lower than the original problem. And this is what I mean. Original problem was x to the third. Our answer starts off with x squared. So hopefully this video was helpful for you guys on polynomial expressions and the different methods to solve. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Enjoy this video. Join us next time. I'm sorry.